They tried to seize our sun, but the moment our signal fired, their armadas witnessed. Part 1. The dimming Dr. Hannah Park stared at her screens and felt her blood turn cold. The numbers were wrong. They had to be wrong. She ran the calculations again, then a third time. Each time, the result was the same. The sun was dying. Not in the way stars normally die, over billions of years. This was happening now. Every hour, the sun's energy output dropped by 0.3%. At this rate, Earth would freeze within days. Hannah grabbed her communication device and called Captain Dae-ho Kim on the orbital defense station above Earth. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Captain, we have a serious problem. Someone is stealing our sun." Dae-ho was a calm man. He had served in the military for 20 years and had seen many terrible things. But when he looked out the observation window and saw what was happening, even he felt fear grip his heart. Massive structures had appeared around the sun. They were larger than anything humans had ever built. Each one was the size of a small moon, and there were hundreds of them. They formed a ring around the star, and long cables of energy connected them to the sun's surface. They were draining it like vampires drinking blood. "What are those things?" asked Young-soo, the young communications officer standing beside him. Before Dae-ho could answer, every screen on the station lit up with an incoming message. The language was alien, but translation software quickly decoded it. "Attention, primitive species. This star has been claimed by the Vreth Dominion. You have 72 hours to evacuate. Your sun now fuels our empire. Resistance is not recommended." Dae-ho felt anger replace his fear. "Get me Admiral Sungmin Choi, now!" Within the hour, humanity's leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. On screens around the world, people watched the impossible sight of their sun growing dimmer. Temperatures had already dropped 2 degrees. Scientists predicted that within a week, most life on Earth would be dead. Admiral Sungmin was an old woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had fought in 3 wars and never lost. But as she studied the alien ships that now filled the space around the sun, she knew this was different. "Our entire fleet would not scratch the paint on one of their ships," she said quietly. "Their technology is thousands of years ahead of ours." The room fell silent. Leaders from every nation looked at each other with despair in their eyes. Some suggested surrender, others suggested negotiation, a few suggested launching nuclear weapons, though everyone knew it would be useless. On Earth, panic spread like wildfire. People ran through the streets. Stores were emptied. Families held each other and cried. In one small apartment in Seoul, a young girl named Bo-ra pressed her face against the window and watched the sky grow darker. "Mama, why is the sun going away?" she asked. Her mother had no answer. She simply held her daughter tighter. Back on the orbital station, Dae-ho received a direct call from Admiral Sungmin. Her face on the screen looked older than he had ever seen it. "Captain Kim, I am authorizing Protocol Helix," she said. Dae-ho blinked. "Admiral, I don't know what that is. Almost no one does. It was created 58 years ago after we discovered evidence that other civilizations had lost their stars to these harvesters." She paused. "It is our last hope. Our only hope." "What does it do?" The Admiral's eyes held something Dae-ho could not read. Fear? Hope? Perhaps both. "It does the impossible, Captain, and it may cost us everything." She took a deep breath. "Prepare your station for significant solar activity. That is all I can tell you for now." The communication ended. Dae-ho stood alone, watching the alien ships through the window. There were thousands of them now. Warships the size of mountains floated in perfect formation. Each one could destroy Earth's entire fleet in seconds, and beyond them, the sun continued to fade. On the largest Vreth warship, Supreme Admiral Calthrex watched the harvesting operation with satisfaction. He had done this hundreds of times before. Every primitive species reacted the same way. First came the panic, then the desperate attacks, then the begging, and finally, silence. These creatures called themselves humans. Calthrex had studied their files. Technology level 4, basic space travel, no faster-than-light capability, no stellar engineering. They were insects compared to the Vreth Dominion. "Admiral," said one of his officers, "the primitives are attempting to communicate again." Calthrex waved his hand dismissively. "Ignore them. They have nothing we want except their star. Continue the extraction." He turned away from the screen showing Earth. In 3 days, their sun would be drained. His fleet would move on to the next system. And these humans would be forgotten, like all the others before them. He did not notice the small ship that had just launched from Earth's moon. He did not know about Protocol Helix. He did not understand that humanity was different from the other species the Vreth had conquered. Humans did not accept the impossible. They changed it. And in the cold depths of space, a signal was about to fire that would make an empire witness something they had never seen before. The clock showed 71 hours remaining. The countdown had begun. They tried to seize our sun, but the moment our signal fired, their armadas witnessed. Part 2. The Forgotten Contingency. 58 years ago, a young scientist named Jin-Woo Lee had looked up at the stars and seen death. His telescope had detected something strange in a distant solar system. A star that had been bright and healthy was suddenly fading. Within weeks, it went dark completely. Jin-Woo studied the data for months. When he finally understood what had happened, he could not sleep for 3 days. Something was eating stars. He brought his findings to the government. Most people laughed at him. Some called him crazy, but a few listened, and those few gave him money, resources, and one simple order: find a way to stop it. Now Jin-Woo was 94 years old. His hair was white, his hands shook, and he needed a machine to help him breathe. But his mind was still sharp. When the Vreth appeared, he knew his life's work had finally come to its purpose. "Grandfather, are you sure about this?" asked Tae Yang, his grandson and the lead engineer on the secret project. Jin-Woo nodded slowly. "I have been preparing for this moment for longer than you have been alive. Bring me to the council." The military leaders gathered in a bunker deep beneath the mountains of Korea. Admiral Sung-min stood at the center, her face grave. Around her were generals, scientists, and politicians from every nation. They had put aside their differences because they all faced the same enemy. Jin-Woo was brought in on a wheelchair. Despite his frail body, his eyes burned with intensity. "Protocol Helix," he began, his voice rough but clear. 58 years ago, I discovered that our galaxy is full of predators, species that harvest stars for energy. They have done this to thousands of systems. They are unstoppable by conventional means. He pressed a button, and a hologram of the sun appeared. "So I created something unconventional." The hologram zoomed into the sun's core. Tiny dots of light appeared, scattered throughout the star's heart. 10,000 quantum transmitters, Jin-Woo explained. "We sent them into the sun over 5 decades, automated probes that could survive the heat and pressure. They are still there, waiting." A general raised his hand. "Waiting for what?" Jin-Woo smiled, but there was no joy in it. "To turn our sun into a weapon." The room exploded with voices. Some shouted that it was impossible. Others demanded explanations. Admiral Sung-min raised her hand for silence. "Explain," she ordered. Jin-Woo nodded. "The transmitters are connected by quantum entanglement. They can create a resonance pattern within the sun's core. When activated, this resonance will cause a directed stellar ejection. In simple terms, we can make the sun fire a beam of plasma at any target we choose." "That is insane," whispered someone in the back. "Yes, Jinwoo agreed. It is, but it will work. Taeyang stepped forward with more data. The ejection will be precise. We can target specific coordinates. The Vreth ships are clustered in groups. We can hit them all. What is the cost? Admiral Sung Min asked quietly. Jinwoo's face grew sad. The sun will become unstable for months. Solar flares will hit Earth. Hundreds of thousands will die from radiation, maybe more. But if we do nothing, everyone dies. This is our only choice. The room fell silent. Every person there understood what Jinwoo was saying. To save humanity, they would have to hurt it. Admiral Sung Min closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, her decision was made. Do it. The activation codes were stored on Mercury, the closest planet to the sun. A relay station had been built there in secret, designed for exactly this moment. But the codes could not be sent remotely. The Vreth were jamming all long-range communications. Someone would have to deliver them personally. Lieutenant Minji Ko was the best pilot in the fleet. She was 29 years old with short black hair and steady hands. When they told her the mission, she did not hesitate. I will do it, she said simply. Her ship was small and fast, designed for stealth. It had no weapons, no shields, and barely enough fuel for the journey. If the Vreth detected her, she would die instantly. She launched in the dark of night, using the moon's shadow to hide her departure. The Vreth fleet filled her sensors like a wall of death. Their ships were everywhere, blocking every obvious path to the sun. Minji did not take the obvious path. She flew through an asteroid field, using the rocks as cover. She passed so close to a Vreth patrol ship that she could see the alien symbols on its hull. Her heart pounded, but her hands remained steady. Hours passed. The sun grew larger and dimmer in her window. The Vreth extractors were clearly visible now, massive machines draining the life from humanity's star. Finally, she saw Mercury. The small planet was scorched and barren, permanently half-facing the dying sun. On its dark side, hidden in a crater, was the relay station. Minji landed without a sound. The station doors opened and Commander June Park rushed out to meet her. You made it, he breathed, relief flooding his voice. Minji handed him the activation codes. How long until we can fire? June looked at the codes, then at the equipment inside the station. 4 hours to charge the system, then we can begin. 4 hours. Minji looked up at the fading sun and the alien ships that surrounded it. Then we better start now. The countdown reached 67 hours. Humanity's weapon was waking up. They tried to seize our sun, but the moment our signal fired, their armadas witnessed. Part 3. The signal Earth was freezing. In Seoul, snow fell in the middle of summer. In Cairo, people who had never felt cold in their lives wrapped themselves in blankets. The oceans began to ice over at the edges. Power grids failed as everyone turned on their heaters at once. The sun hung in the sky like a pale ghost of itself. Its light was weak, its warmth almost gone. Scientists said that at the current rate, temperatures would drop below freezing everywhere within 2 days. On the streets, people looked up at the dying star and prayed to whatever gods they believed in. Some prayed for mercy, some prayed for a miracle. They did not know that the miracle was already in motion. On Mercury, Minji and June worked through the night. The quantum relay system was old and complicated. Every connection had to be checked. Every calculation had to be perfect. One mistake would mean the difference between a precise strike and a wild explosion that might destroy the sun entirely. Charging at 62%, June reported, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. Minji watched the numbers climb on her screen. How much longer? 2 hours? Maybe less. High above them, Supreme Admiral Calthrex grew bored. The harvesting was proceeding on schedule. His ships had taken positions around the sun, their shields protecting them from the star's heat. The extraction machines worked perfectly, pulling energy from the sun and storing it in massive containers. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "the primitives are gathering their fleet." Calthrex turned to look at the display. The human ships were small and few. Their weapons were laughable, their shields were primitive. He counted perhaps 200 vessels moving toward his position. "They are actually going to attack," he said, amused. How entertaining! He had seen this before. Every dying species made one last desperate charge. It never changed anything. Their weapons would bounce off Vreth shields like rain against a mountain. "Shall we destroy them, Admiral?" his weapons officer asked. Calthrex waved his hand lazily. "Let them come closer first. I want them to understand how hopeless their situation is before they die." On the lead human ship, Admiral Sung-min stood on the bridge and looked at the enemy fleet. She knew she was flying to her death. Every person on every ship in her fleet knew the same thing, but they were not trying to win. They were trying to buy time. "All ships," she spoke into her communicator, her voice calm and steady. "Today we fight not for victory, but for hope. Every minute we survive is another minute for Protocol Helix to complete. Today we show the universe what humans are made of." She paused, looking at the faces of her crew. Some were crying. Some were praying. All of them were ready. "Humanity does not surrender," she said. "Humanity adapts. Now let us give these invaders something to remember." The human fleet charged. Vreth weapons fired instantly. Massive beams of energy cut through space. Human ships exploded one after another, their shields useless against such power. But for every ship that died, another took its place. They flew straight at the enemy, firing every weapon they had. The Vreth shields absorbed everything without a scratch. Sung-min's ship shook as a beam passed nearby, destroying 3 vessels beside her. She gripped her chair and kept her eyes on the enemy. "Status of Mercury Station," she demanded. "Charging at 89%, Admiral." She smiled grimly. Almost there. On Mercury, Minji's hands shook as she entered the final commands. The relay station hummed with power. The quantum transmitters deep inside the sun were waking up, connecting to each other, forming a network of pure energy. 95%, June counted. 97, 99. The station lights flickered. 100%, system charged. Minji looked at the screen showing the final activation code. One button, one press, and everything would change. She thought about Earth, about the people freezing in the streets, about young Bo-Ra looking up at the dying sun, about Admiral Sung-min and her fleet, sacrificing themselves for this moment. "Do it," June whispered. Minji pressed the button. For exactly 3.7 seconds, nothing happened. Then the sun woke up. Deep in the star's core, 10,000 quantum transmitters activated simultaneously. They created a resonance pattern that had never existed before in nature. Energy focused, plasma gathered, pressure built to impossible levels. And then the sun fired. A column of stellar matter 500,000 kilometers wide erupted from the sun's surface. It moved at 3% the speed of light. It was not random. It was not an accident. It was aimed with perfect precision at the Vreth Northern Fleet. Calthrex had exactly half a second to see it coming. His sensors screamed warnings. His officers shouted in panic. His shields, designed to withstand any known weapon, activated at full power. They might as well have been made of paper. The plasma beam hit 13 Vreth capital ships simultaneously. There was no explosion, no debris. The ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant by the fury of a star. Calthrex watched in frozen horror as his most powerful vessels vanished like drops of water in a furnace. "Impossible," he whispered. Then the sun fired again, and again, and again. Each pulse was precise, each pulse was targeted. The quantum network guided them with surgical accuracy, hitting cluster after cluster of Vreth ships. On her damaged bridge, Admiral Sung-min watched the destruction through tear-filled eyes. "Humanity adapts," she whispered. The Vreth were running. They tried to seize our sun, but the moment our signal fired, their armadas witnessed. Part 4. The witnessing Supreme Admiral Calthrex had conquered 47 solar systems. He had destroyed civilizations that built cities across entire planets. He had harvested stars that burned brighter than 1,000 suns. He had never known fear. Now, standing on the bridge of his flagship as chaos erupted around him, he felt terror grip his hearts for the first time in his long life. "How is this possible?" he roared. No one answered. His officers were too busy screaming orders, trying to save what remained of the fleet. On every screen, the same nightmare played out. The sun, the star they had come to steal, was attacking them. Another pulse fired. Another group of ships vanished. Calthrex's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. The primitives had weaponized their star. Not just weaponized it, but controlled it with impossible precision. Each blast hit exactly where it was aimed. There was no randomness, no waste. This was not technology level 4. This was technology level 9, star engineering. Only 3 species in the known galaxy had achieved it. None of them were this young. None of them were this primitive in other ways. "Admiral!" his science officer screamed. "They have quantum transmitters inside the star's core. Thousands of them. They have turned their sun into a directed energy weapon." Calthrex felt his legs weaken. For 58 years, the humans had been preparing for this moment. While the Vreth had dismissed them as insects, the humans had been building a weapon that could hurt gods. Another pulse. 20 more ships gone. "Retreat!" Calthrex ordered. "All ships, retreat immediately!" The great Vreth Armada, thousands of vessels that had arrived with arrogant certainty, now fled in panic. Ships collided with each other in their desperate rush to escape. The massive Dyson extractors, worth more than entire planets, were abandoned without a second thought. On the orbital station above Earth, Captain Daeho watched the impossible sight with tears running down his face. "Are you seeing this?" Young-Soo whispered beside him. Daeho could only nod. The sun blazed brighter than it had in days. Pulses of fire lanced out in precise patterns, chasing the fleeing enemy ships. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. It was humanity's fury made visible. Young-Soo suddenly looked at his communication panel. His eyes went wide. "Captain, I am picking up Vreth transmissions. They are not encrypted anymore. They are too panicked to care about security." "What are they saying?" Young-Soo listened, his translator working quickly. His face went pale. "They are screaming, sir. They are calling us stellar class. They are telling each other to retreat because we have star engineering capability. They are terrified." Daeho closed his eyes. Humanity had been seen as nothing, insects to be stepped on. Now, in the span of minutes, they had become something the galaxy feared. The sun fired 3 more times. Then, slowly, it began to calm. The quantum network was powering down. It could not be used again for years without risking the star's destruction. But the damage was done. The Vreth fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel. Where thousands of ships had gathered, there was now only empty space and slowly cooling debris. Humanity had won. But Dr. Hannah Park knew this was only the beginning. She stood in her observatory, watching the sun return to normal brightness. Her instruments showed something that made her breath catch. "The pulses," she said quietly. They were visible across multiple star systems. Her assistant looked confused. "What does that mean?" Hannah turned to face him, her expression a mixture of wonder and worry. "It means we just sent a message to the entire galaxy. Everyone within 50 light years just saw a primitive species turn their star into a precision weapon. We are not invisible anymore. We are not unknown." She looked back at the sun, now burning normally again. We just announced ourselves as a species that should not be underestimated. And now, everyone is going to be watching. On Earth, the temperature began to rise again. People emerged from their shelters, looking up at the sun with new eyes. It was the same star that had warmed their planet for billions of years. But now, it was something more. It was their protector. Their weapon, their shield against the darkness between the stars. In Seoul, young Bo-Ra ran outside with her mother. The sun felt warm on her face for the first time in days. She laughed and spun around, arms stretched wide. "The sun came back!" she shouted happily. Her mother held her close, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Yes, baby, the sun came back." She did not tell her daughter that the sun had not just come back. It had fought for them. It had destroyed their enemies with fire and fury. Bo-Ra was too young to understand that the universe had changed today. But one day, she would learn. One day, everyone would learn what humanity had done when faced with extinction. They had made their star answer, and the galaxy had witnessed. They tried to seize our sun, but the moment our signal fired, their Armadas witnessed. Part 5. The Message Received. 3 months had passed since the day humanity made the sun their weapon. The cost had been high. The solar pulses had caused radiation storms that killed 400,000 people. Crops had failed across half the planet. Power grids had collapsed. Economies had crumbled. But humanity was alive. And now, everything was different. Old Jinwoo Lee died on a quiet morning, surrounded by his grandson Tai Yang and a room full of flowers sent by grateful nations. He had lived long enough to see his life's work save his species. On his deathbed, he smiled. "Tell them," he whispered to Tai Yang, "that the stars are not our enemies. They are our partners. We just had to learn how to speak their language." He closed his eyes for the last time. The funeral was broadcast across the world. Billions watched and wept for the old scientist who had given them a future. But there was no time for long mourning, because the galaxy had received humanity's message. The first transmission came 2 weeks after the battle. It was from a species called the Teller Consortium, a federation of 12 spacefaring races. They were neither hostile nor friendly. They were curious. "We observed the solar event in your system," their message said. "We request peaceful contact to understand your capabilities." More messages followed. 7 alien civilizations had detected the stellar pulses. Some sent diplomatic greetings. Some sent scientific questions. Some sent nothing but silence, which was somehow more frightening. Ambassador Kyung-Suk Han was chosen to represent humanity. She was 60 years old, a former professor of languages who had spent her life studying how people communicate across cultures. Now she would study how species communicate across stars. "We must be careful," she told the World Council. "We have shown the galaxy that we can be dangerous. Now we must show them that we can be wise." The Vreth Dominion sent their own message. It was short and formal. They declared the Sol system a sovereign preservation zone and promised never to return. It was as close to an apology as such a proud species would ever give, but not everyone in the galaxy was impressed by shows of power. Captain Daeho, now promoted to admiral, stood on the rebuilt observation deck of his station. He watched the stars with new eyes. Each point of light was now a potential friend or enemy. Each darkness between them held mysteries and threats. Young-Soo approached him, carrying a data pad. "Sir, our deep space sensors detected something." Daeho took the pad and frowned at the readings. "What am I looking at?" "Surveillance drones, sir. 2 different types, from 2 different sources. They appeared at the edge of our system yesterday. They are just watching." Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. The curious civilizations had sent messages. These ones had sent eyes. They were studying humanity, measuring them, perhaps planning something. Can we identify who sent them? Young-Su shook his head. The technology does not match anything in the Vreth databases we captured. These are unknowns. Daeho looked back at the stars. Humanity had announced itself as a force to be respected. But respect could attract attention of many kinds. Some would want to be friends, some would want to be partners, and some would want to test just how dangerous humans really were. On Mercury, the relay station had become a monument. Minji-ko had returned home a hero, but she visited the station every year on the anniversary of the signal. A plaque had been placed at the entrance. They tried to seize our son. They witnessed our answer. She would stand there for hours, looking at the sun that she had helped command. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Humanity had touched something ancient and powerful, and the universe would never see them the same way again. Back on Earth, young Bo-Ra started school. In her first science class, she learned that the sun was not just a ball of fire in the sky. It was humanity's greatest weapon and closest ally. Her teacher showed pictures of the battle, of the plasma beams destroying alien ships. Humans are special, the teacher explained. Other species saw a problem and accepted defeat. We saw a problem and found a way to make stars fight for us. Bo-Ra listened with wide eyes. She had been so young during the crisis that she barely remembered the fear. But she would never forget the feeling of warmth returning to her face when the sun came back. That night, she told her mother that she wanted to be a scientist when she grew up. She wanted to learn more ways to talk to stars. Her mother smiled and held her close. High above them, a new transmission arrived. Admiral Daeho was the first to read it. We are the collective of the Outer Rim. We have watched the younger races for 10,000 years. Your display of stellar engineering has earned our attention. We wish to meet the species that commands stars. We will arrive at the edge of your system in 30 cycles. Daeho read the message 3 times. Then he turned to Young-Su. Send a response. Tell them we will be waiting. He walked to the observation window and looked at the sun. It burned steadily, peacefully, as it had for billions of years. But now it was something more than a star. It was proof of what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. They had been nobody in a vast and dangerous galaxy. Now they were the species that made stars into weapons, the species that refused to die quietly, the species that turned the impossible into their greatest triumph. Other races had touched the cosmos with curiosity. Humanity had touched it with fire, and the cosmos had finally noticed. Daeho allowed himself a small smile. Let them come, he whispered to the stars. We will show them what humanity can do. The sun burned on, steady and bright, waiting for the next challenge. And humanity, bruised but unbroken, looked to the future with fierce hope in their hearts. The message had been received. The galaxy was listening, and humanity was just getting started. The end.